Season 1 of What If has come to a close. That means it's time to stop and rank all 9 episodes of What If from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 9 episodes of What If. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I have a couple companion videos to this over on my Patreon page. One is a Season 1 review, looking at it from the big picture and the nature of the season as a whole. The second one is me discussing what if scenarios I would like to see. I think I have 5 or 6 different ones that I kind of propose in that video. Join over on Patreon at any level and you can unlock those videos plus so much more over on Patreon. I do a weekly Q&A on Saturdays. Join at any level, you get access to all that fun stuff. Link is down below in the description, and let's get started. Coming in last place, episode 7, What If Thor Was an Only Child? To me, this was the only episode of the season where I went, really? This is what we're doing? You only got 9 episodes for the season, and you decided to have Thor throw a party on Earth. And I had some fun with it. I don't hate the episode or anything like that. You know, I rewatched it twice on the day it came out, once by myself and then once again later with my kids. And, you know, it puts a little smile on my face. But I think at the end of the day, my big issue is when you kind of do the scenario where you can run through any number of what-if scenarios and explore all these different options in the multiverse, Thor throwing a party on Earth just isn't one that is that interesting to me. And even inherently inside of the episode, there's a number of things that happen that feel like more interesting stories than what we got. Where you see Drax and Nebula at this party on Earth, which by implication means that the places that we saw them in the main timeline so broken up over their families in very different senses and very different means didn't happen. Or they're responding to it very differently, in which case Thor being an only child thousands of years in the past has this big trickle down throughout history. And that is more, tickles my brain a lot more than him being a doofus on Earth, playing into all the high school party genre cliches with the parent that's rushing home and they have to clean up and try and come up with the right lie at just the right moment to cover up for everything that's taking place. So for me, there's some cute moments. It's fun to see Thor with Jane once again. But in general, I just don't understand why they picked to go in this particular direction for a full episode. Number 8, episode 6, What If Killmonger Rescued Tony Stark? Now, the basic idea here of showing Killmonger's revenge scheme to take over Wakanda, starting at a different point in time in the MCU, is kind of interesting, especially kind of making Tony Stark so central to it. It plays out the universe differently while taking this character and still being true to his driving ideology and mission. But I think it also, whenever you take a villain and make them center stage, it doesn't really give you anyone to root for. As you go through it, obviously, we know Killmonger's a bad dude. He's not different here. The story isn't designed to shape and mold him differently so he gets to a different endpoint. It's to show him getting to the same endpoint from a different starting point. And so we obviously don't want him to be victorious. We don't want him to win. And because he's duping all of our friends, all of our, Tony Stark and all these other Rhodey, all throughout the story, we're not really rooting for the other heroes either. So you have a story that's just watching bad guys winning, heroes making bad choices and failing. And then you get to the end of it, and it feels like they cut off the last 5 minutes of the episode. Now that we've seen the finale, we kind of realize that maybe they cut it off because they wanted to be able to pull the character out and drop him in the finale. But in general, you're telling this story that it feels like the resolution is what happens after what the cliffhanger shows. That's not a cliffhanger teasing a different story. That's this same story of, will Killmonger succeed in his schemes? 2 people figure it out, they're about to try and take him down, and then the episode just ends. Whereas these other cliffhangers, the story is resolved and then the cliffhanger teases the next story, something different happening. That's the same story. You just cut your story off too soon. That's frustrating, and so not one of my favorite episodes. Next up, episode 3, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? As a point of reference, I actually really like pretty much all the episodes from here onward on the list. Even this episode, I really dug this one. Only the bottom 2 am I kind of iffy on a little bit. So when it comes to this episode, I thought it worked best on first viewing rather than on reflection or second viewing. And the big reason for that is essentially the episode is a mystery where you're trying to figure out what actually did change, because the what if is the consequence of the actual change, whereas the other episodes show you the change and play that out. Here, we're trying to figure out what exactly did happen that led to this outcome. And so then once you kind of know the final reveal that it was Hope being recruited and dying that triggers Hank Pym, I don't know, it just didn't have too much for me on second viewing. With all that said, I think there's something very clever in telling a what if that acknowledges that 3 MCU movies took place basically over a weekend and finding a narrative to play all 3 of them out very differently. It's a conspiracy story, an investigation. And so I dug all of that. And it's not one that I felt there's much to be explored. Once you watch it once, it's like, cool, that was a nice watch. What's next? Number 6, episode 1, What If Captain Carter Were the First Avenger? The first episode was probably the most conventional of all the episodes in the season, as they swap out who gets that super soldier serum, and then it largely follows the same structure of Captain America the First Avenger, just swaps out what happens in each of the beats that take place. And so I think probably a little bit too safe, a little bit too familiar, but at the same time, a lot of fun twists and turns along the way. In particular, you're watching it, and I hadn't watched some of the clips that they put out, and so I didn't have some things spoiled for me. So when Steve Rogers showed up in Stark Tech, I didn't know that was going to happen. I thought that was a nice, pleasant surprise. When you get to the finale, or when you get 3/4 of the way through it, and Steve Rogers might be dead, I didn't know that was going to happen. And then when they start fighting cosmic monsters, that was certainly a change of pace from what we saw before. And so I think they found a way to take the structure that we knew and throw a lot of new, interesting things in there. In fact, I think the thing that really hurts this one for me isn't so much the familiarity of it, but I think it just needed to be 10 minutes longer, because they are following so closely to the structure of a 2-hour movie, but squeezing it into 35 minutes. You felt that. You felt how rushed it was. It couldn't pause to breathe, to allow us to soak in how this is different and how the things that are taking place are emotionally affecting the characters. I wish it had done that, given it more time. And otherwise, I think a fun spin on the first Avenger with a nice opportunity for Peggy to take the lead. In 5th place, episode 2, What If T'Challa Became Starlord? Now, this is one that really surprised me, because after episode 1, I was expecting the show to follow the structure and template of the movies very closely, and then this one started off, and after the little intro sequence, it plays out as a radically different story and uses the what if concept dramatically differently from the first episode. And in doing so, it sets the change in the storyline decades before. And T'Challa, his character, his leadership, has this enormous trickle-down effect on the universe. And in fact, suddenly the Ravagers become this Robin Hood type set of characters that are trying to help all these worlds, because that's who T'Challa is. And he has such a big personality. It is so good at understanding how people work and to work with them that even Thanos joins the cause and realizes, hey, wiping out half the universe, not the way to do it. This T'Challa guy, there's something to him. I thought that was all great. But really, what I think elevated this one was its humor and its heart. That it played off our expectations really nicely, because we knew these characters and saw so many of them in such wildly different places. This just sets up some good punchlines. But more importantly, it takes what we know about Yondu and his treatment of Starlord and applies that to T'Challa, and there's different lies that factor in because of that, because of who he is. And T'Challa would respond to that wildly differently. And so as you get into the back half and T'Challa returns home and his father's still alive, there's just a lot of emotion in all of that I thought worked really well. In fourth place, episode 5, What If? Zombies. This is the weirdest, wildest of the bunch, where they take this very fan-fiction-y idea and find a way to actually sandwich it between two MCU films and just deliver something they could never do in live action, could never do with a movie, but we actually get this story brought to life through the What If series, and I think it's just a real treat to the fans that we get something like this. And it's not just this one-off gimmick. They really do tie it into the timeline of the MCU of the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp and what happens there of people coming out of the quantum realm. What if that virus was brought into the world? But that event took place right before Infinity War, which creates this series of scenarios that make sense, that everyone's trying to get to Wakanda, this highly advanced place. But Wakanda is also where Thanos would be headed, where these Infinity Stones are at and everything. That just, there's a logic to it where you can do all of these fan-fiction-y type things. You can have the big, great final shot of zombie Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, but it's internally consistent with the established lore. That's what elevates this stuff. I mean, of course, I love all the little moments that you get in there of zombie Wanda and gigantic Wasp kicking through crowds and then becoming zombie gigantic. All that stuff is great. Spider-Man with Doctor Strange's cape. Like, all of that is amazing that we get that. But they found a way to do it that really does fit into the timeline of the MCU. That's the real magic on this. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to share your favorites or your ranking down below in the comment section. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, remember, there are a couple companion videos over on my Patreon page. One is that Season 1 review where I talk about it overall, the writing, the storytelling, and much more detail about what I liked and what frustrated me and what concerned me a little bit. And then that other companion piece is my pitches for like 5 or 6 different what ifs. What are the ones that I would like to see? Why? What are the opportunities, the potential with some of them? Some of the weird stuff that I didn't even know how to explore because there are even some future things we haven't seen yet, but I think there's a what if based off what we do know about some of these future properties. Link is down below in the description. Join at any level. You can unlock those videos, so much more, as well as the weekly Q&As. Let's get back to it. Kicking off our top 3, episode 9, What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? And to be perfectly clear, I thought all of these top 3 were excellent. I thought all of them delivered emotion, energy, cleverness, all the stuff that I wanted. And I wasn't even sure how to rank them. So anyway, the finale for season 1 was easily one of the best episodes of the season, where it really did pull everything together. And inherently with a show like this, it can feel like a gimmick, it can feel like a novelty, just this anthology series with these one-off shows. And these last 2 episodes pulled it together. And this is the one where you really saw the Watcher pulling all of these characters from their cliffhangers at the end of their episodes and doing this big, gigantic showdown. The next to last episode was the setup, and this episode is all payoff. And what I really love about this episode is it gives Strange Supreme a redemptive arc. Because in his episode, he does evil things trying to save someone. He's not trying to do something purely evil. It's for selfish reasons. He's warned about it. He does something terrible that has dire consequences. But at its core, it's driven by his love for someone. And so the hero's still inside of him. And he's had that arc to where he's learned the mistakes of his past. And so then you get this monster version of Doctor Strange that's incredibly powerful and given an opportunity to stop someone far worse. And there's just so many great things that come from that. Whether Thor throws his hammer and he multiplies it so you have all these Mjolnirs smashing into Ultron, or him summoning all the zombies from the zombie universe with zombie Wanda at the core of all of it. A bunch of just awesome, awesome moments inside of it. And then even at the end where you have Killmonger trying to use the armor to try and fix the worlds, and Strange has learned the lesson of attempting to use this unbelievable power in that manner. So he won't do it. And so he's going to stop him and gets to be the hero. And despite turning into a monster and destroying his own universe, he's able to save the multiverse. I just thought that was great. I think holding it back from the top higher up on the list is, I think they're breaking their own rules here with the Infinity Stones and them not being able to be smashed, but Ultron can use them in different universes. That's really the broken logic there, and especially with what's established in Loki, that held it back. Otherwise, I thought a great finale. Our runner-up, episode 8, What If Ultron Won? And this episode put just such a massive grin on my face as you both kind of played out this scenario, that this bleak reality where Ultron starts getting Infinity Stones, starts destroying planets, and then he goes after the multiverse. And so then you get the Watcher having to step in and no longer just being this Watcher, but being an active character that's having to make choices of his own. And I think just adds a gravitas to what's taking place. And once again, as I mentioned before, that the show ties into the mythology of the MCU and has a deep knowledge of what happened. So he's this AI, so what AI is also out there? We've got Analog, Zola out there. I think that's just really smart. And so to me, this episode, I love the dire stakes, that it really matters for the multiverse as a whole, ties everything together, and just gives it a weight to everything that's transpired up to this point in time. So for me, one of the absolute best episodes of the season. But coming in first place, episode 4, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands? To me, this episode was just a punch to the gut emotionally. It's a true tragedy about a hero driven by a broken heart and wanting to bring back the person that he loves and seeking ultimate power to do it, and being blinded by that pursuit of power to bring her back. And it comes at the cost of absolutely everything. He turns himself into a monster and he destroys his universe in the process. And when she sees him, she just sees the monster. That is so profound. And one of the things they say is a great villain perceives of himself as the hero of his own story. And this plays that out literally. We follow a hero that's actually the villain. And everyone's trying to stop him. But the villain gets to win. And it comes at the cost of everything. I think there's something profound to that. And then at the end, he realizes just how bad he's become, setting up the fantastic return in the finale. I just loved all of it. The music here is also the best music of the entire season. It's so tragic. It's so sad, so emotional. So I thought this is a great example of what you can do with What If. Taking a character we know and taking them on this emotional journey that's so different, so much darker than they could do with the movie, and pays off so well and sets up some amazing things. So for me, easily this one came in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I did single episode reviews for each of them right over there. Also over on my Patreon, I have those 2 exclusives, the season review, as well as my pitches for some what if scenarios. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.